Hi everyone, welcome to Art and Anxiety. In this video, I'm continuing to work on customizing the coffee shop kit, and I'm going to show you how I changed up the lighting and also added in a better on-off switch. The directions have us making the 2 ceiling lights as the next step, but there's also a third light for the patio area that's installed towards the end of the directions. I didn't see any good reason not to do all of the lights at the same time, so that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully it doesn't come back to bite me in the ass later, like so many of my decisions tend to do, but that is a problem for future Anne. I had to prep a few things for the light installation, so I glued the skylight to the ceiling piece, and I also painted the ceiling green to match my other trim. In retrospect, I should have reversed the order of those 2 steps, but I don't always have a firm grasp of the obvious. While the ceiling was drying, I installed the music box that came with the kit. I wasn't sure if I was going to use it or not, but it has this creepy little dystopian tune, so I decided to keep it. Next, I put together the table for the patio, and I decided to keep the fabric that came with the kit, mostly because I just couldn't find anything that I liked better in my stash. If my husband would just let me have a warehouse for my craft supplies, I would always have what I wanted on hand, but for some reason he's against the idea. I'm not sure why. Before we jump into playing with electricity, if you're enjoying this video, be sure to click the like button. If you don't, my dog will go hungry. How does that even work? I don't know. Who am I to question YouTube's analytics? Just do it so this poor baby doesn't starve. Okay, back to making stuff. The kit provides these flower-shaped beads for the ceiling lights, and they're pretty much in the same style category as the flowered wallpaper I trashed in the last video. They gotta go. Additionally, the light that they have you make for the patio table is a candelabra, which I'm sure does not comply with any fire code in the US, so that's going in the bin too. I'm replacing them with a few silver beads that I found in my stash, as well as these globe charms that I purchased to make a crystal ball for my witch house a while back. I'll leave a link for those and all of the other supplies that I use in the description box below. The globes come in 2 sizes, which is perfect for 2 larger ceiling lights and a smaller table lamp for the patio table. The pieces I use that are from the kit are the LED lights, the wire, and a piece of tubing that's used as a spacer when you hang the lights. I didn't want the shades for my light to be completely clear, so I coated the inside of the globes with a couple of coats of matte sealer, which took forever to dry. Not kidding. It took like 2 days. Have I mentioned that I am not a patient person? I'm not. And so I may or may not be able to tell you from personal experience that it is not a great idea to try and speed the process along with a heat gun. Unless, of course, you want to see what boiling paint splattered on your face feels like. Because I'm changing the materials that I'm making the lights out of, I tested the metal beads to see if they would conduct electricity, and they do. So, to prevent an electrical short, I wrapped the positive wire that's exposed from the base of the bulb with a piece of shrink tubing, but you can also do it with tape. Now, in this kit, the positive wires are white, and the negative wires are nearly white-gray, just to make them super easy to tell apart. Once I had wrapped the wires and the shades were completely dry, I put together the table lamp by stringing the beads onto the wire and gluing them together, and then I glued the globe directly onto the beads. Now, every time I finished a step in making the lights, I tested them with a battery pack to make sure I hadn't damaged the cords or the lights in the process. I didn't want to get everything glued into the room and then find that there was a short after the fact and the lights didn't work. Once the glue had set on the table lamp, I strung the wires for the lamp through the hole in the table and then glued the lamp into place. It's the same process for the ceiling lights, except you also have to string on the piece of tubing that is just a little too small for both wires to fit comfortably. My recommendation for getting them through and moving it into place is to use tweezers, curse words, and a lot of threatening language. So, about the battery pack. The pack provided in the kit takes 2 AAA batteries and has an on-off switch on the front of the case. The way you're supposed to turn the lights on and off is to line up the switch with the hole in the floor and then stick a screwdriver or a pen, I guess, through the hole to flip the switch. Now, I don't know about you, but this felt like a design flaw to me. I'm going to switch out this battery pack for one that doesn't have a switch on it, and this one also takes 2 AA batteries, but that's okay because 2 AA's and 2 AAA's put out the same amount of voltage. The switches I got for the light in my Harry Dresden diorama came in a pack of 50, so I currently have switches for days, and they're small enough to almost fit in the hole provided. I traced the switch around the existing opening and used a carbide bit in my Dremel to grind off the excess material so that the switch would fit in the hole snugly. It's a little ugly right now, but I'll show you how to trim it out in the next video. Once the switch was in place, I fed the wires for the table lamp through the hole in the floor and glued the table down. The kit comes with extra wire to extend the wiring for the ceiling lights. It was barely enough for me, but I might have mucked up the wire placement. I don't know. This extra wire is white, so you'll need to mark off which one is your negative. The kit says to tie a knot in it, but I opted to just color the end of it with a black Sharpie. You'll also need to trim the insulation away from the copper wire inside. If you have a wire stripper, that is the ideal way to do it, but I don't. So I just very lightly scored a line around the insulation with my craft knife and pulled it right off. The kit comes with tape for taping off your wires. It's terrible, but it's there, so I used it. Just cut off a few strips and keep them nearby. Start connecting your ceiling lamps by twisting all of the negative wires together. And remember, those are the barely gray, but really almost white wires. And then cover the twist completely with tape. Then do the same thing for the positive wires and check to make sure your connection is good and the lights work. To add some additional strength to my connections, I also use shrink tubing over them. It just helps the tape joints stay together if they get tugged. And to use it, you just slide the tube over the connection and shrink it with a heat gun. No touchy. Hot, 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 hot. Once the lighting rig is assembled, it is time to glue it into the ceiling. While I was gluing down the wires, I noticed that the connection point wasn't landing in the actual corner of the ceiling, and with the addition of the bright yellow shrink tubing was gonna be really noticeable in the room. So to hide the wires, I grabbed a plastic straw and made some electrical conduit out of it by painting it silver. And then I took a strip of chipboard, also painted silver, and glued it around the top and bottom of the straw to make it look even more like electrical conduit. Now, this would have been so much easier to do before I put the wires through the straw. But when I was testing my proof of concept, I realized I couldn't get it back off. The silver on the conduit was way too bright and shiny to be actual electrical conduit, so I went over it twice with my black wash just to grunge it up a bit. After the glue had cured and all the paint had dried, I threaded the wires through the hole in the floor and then glued the ceiling into place. So my husband convinced me to drill a hole in the prongs of the switch to make my electrical connection a little bit more secure. It drilled really easily with my Dremel, but this is a totally optional step. You can just tape the connection. I think as long as you're not playing frisbee with your finished dollhouse, a taped connection is going to be just fine. I used a couple of glue dots to stick my battery case into the base and then strung all of the positive wires up through the hole where my switch is going to go. Now remember, the positive wires are the white ones along with the red wire from the battery pack. The switch can be wired to either the positive or the negative side of the battery case, but it's a little better for your electrics, or so I've been told, if you put it on the positive side. I slid a piece of shrink tube over the two white wires before twisting them together and threading them through the hole on one side of the switch. Once they were through, I bent them over and taped them onto the prong. Then I slid the tube up over the connection point and shrank it to hold everything together. It's the exact same process to connect the red wire to the other side of the switch. Once everything was secure, I pulled the wires back through the hole and pushed the switch into the opening. I didn't need any glue to hold it in because I made it on the small side so it would be a pressure fit to keep it in place. Once that was done, I flipped everything over and connected all of the negative wires together by twisting, taping, and shrinking again. When all of the connections were done, I taped the wires down so they wouldn't get caught on anything when the base was moved in the future. Here's the big reveal. I think changing the light fixtures to something a little more contemporary suits the space much better. And changing the switch makes it so much easier to turn the lights on and off. Plus, it makes this really satisfying clicking sound. Now, the electrical conduit does block the window a tiny little bit, but that's how most of the old commercial buildings in my area look. They just did electrical and plumbing installations all willy-nilly back in the day. Like, you didn't actually want to use that window, did you? So I think it adds to the realism. I really like how this is coming together. It's not completely different from the original kit, it's just elevated. In the next video, I'm going to add some trim to the switch to make it look like it belongs there, and we'll complete the awning, the sign, and maybe some other bits and bobs. If you've watched this far and are against puppies starving, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And while you're in the neighborhood, be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get notifications when I post new videos. Princess Ophelia Smooshy Face says thank you.
Thank you.
Until next time, stay sane.